Mr. Lapointe apologizes for the interruption, my lord. He was just momentarily overcome.
Very well. Continue, please, Miss Dade.
My lord. So, Lady Dorothy, it was discovered that the young Tom Crittenden had contracted a marriage with a Katangan woman while suffering the effects of fever.
Yes. Tom was brought back to civilization, Leopoldville, that is, and I went out to meet him. The arrangements for the divorce were put in train immediately, and, well, Tom seemed pitifully grateful. He quite realized that he'd been in an unreal state of mind. A remarkably generous settlement was arranged for the Katangan woman. £10,000, I think. A fortune for her.
You were concerned in the divorce arrangements, were you, Lady Dorothy?
Well, I was there at the time. I looked after Tom in an hotel while our fathers saw to the legal details.
Now, was there at this time the mention of a child of the marriage that Tom had contracted?
No, never.
Or the likelihood of a pregnancy on the part of Marika Barlow?
No.
At any time during your subsequent marriage to Sir Tom Crittenden, did he ever say that there had been offspring or the possibility of offspring of this earlier union?
No. He never even referred to the marriage again. It was buried deep in a forgotten past.
Now, Lady Dorothy, you gave instructions for money to be advanced to Mr. Lapointe. Why did you do that? Did you believe that he might well be your late husband's son?
Well, I never believed it. It began to bother me, and I couldn't sleep at night. So I sent for Raoul Lapointe, and I said that as there were areas of doubt, he should have some money for the time being.
And what was Lapointe's response to that, Lady Dorothy?
Very favorable. He even thanked me for my understanding. It was only later, as he was leaving the house, that I...
Yes?
Well, I overheard him talking to my daughter Kate, and this surprised me, because I wasn't aware that they were familiar. He was saying, that was easy. That was just too easy. If the rest is half as easy, I shall make out I'm twins. Whoever put it around that honesty was the best policy. And they laughed.
He said all this to your daughter, Kate?
Yes.
I see. Thank you, Lady Dorothy.
Lady Dorothy, wasn't the real reason that you advanced money to my client that you hoped he would drop his guard and give you room to maneuver?
Young man, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, very well, Lady Dorothy. Let me ask you something which I trust you will understand. Mr. Bowers was anxious to find out if the old missionary, Mr. Van Helm, was still alive. Shouldn't he have been encouraged in that enterprise?
Well, why? It seemed to be most unlikely that the old man could still be alive. Apparently he was advanced in years when he married them.
Lady Dorothy, would you really have wanted his testimony in the matter if, in fact, the old man was still alive?
My lord, must I be subjected to such pointless and offensive questions?
You are perhaps being somewhat aggressive, Mr. Harvester. But Lady Dorothy, the motivation of witnesses, including your own, are of vital importance to us here, and I think you should make every effort to answer the question.
Very well. Naturally, I had no reason for not wanting Van Helm to be found, if he was still alive.
But Mr. Harvester, have we any way, in fact, of finding out if Mr. August Van Helm is alive or dead?
My lord, the defense has tried very hard to find him, but unfortunately without success.
I see. Thank you.
Lady Dorothy, tell me, what was the reaction of your children to the news that a young African was claiming to be their half-brother?
Well, my son Bernard was shocked and alarmed. He'd always loved and respected his father, and this tale of some former marriage of a child, well, he found it quite incredible. My daughter, on the other hand, Kate, chose to be amused.
I see. Did that cause division in the family?
You could put it like that.
Now, you've told us that you overheard a conversation between your daughter and Mr. Lapointe, which you thought was both sinister and significant. Did you later on discuss that conversation with your daughter?
I tried to, but Kate refused to speak to me. I don't understand Kate in this matter. From the beginning, she seemed to think it was some sort of an achievement to have a African half-brother.
Lady Dorothy, does the name Lapointe have some special significance for you?
I don't understand.
Oh, I think you do, Lady Dorothy. Haven't you heard the name Lapointe a little closer to home, shall we say?
Oh, very well. As it happens, Lapointe was the maiden name of my late husband's mother. They were a Jersey family. But this doesn't prove anything. Merely that Mr. Lapointe organized his defenses very carefully before visiting this disgusting hoax on me and my family.
Lady Dorothy, that is not an acceptable observation at this point.
Please, my lord, can't we have the truth at last? I have nothing more to tell this court. Of course Lapointe is a liar, only after money. He isn't even remotely what he pretends to be. Even that birth certificate he presented to Mr. Bowers is a fraud, a blatant forgery. It's been proved.
In 46, when Sir Tom Crittenden wished to be free of his marriage to Marie Caballo, did he ever say why he didn't seek an annulment rather than a divorce? Can you tell us?
I beg your pardon.
You were there with him in Leopoldville when the arrangements were made, you told us. You've also told us that he was desperately ill when he contracted the marriage. That would seem to suggest that he wasn't in possession of his faculties. Wouldn't it have been simpler for him to seek an annulment? A simple declaration that a true marriage had never taken place.
Well, yes. That was the course that my father suggested, but Tom refused.
Why, Lady Dorothy?
I've no idea.
Your father's dead now, isn't he?
Yes.
And Sir Tom's father?
Yes.
Then we've only got you to ask about it, haven't we? Didn't Sir Tom give you a single reason for seeking a divorce rather than an annulment?
Very well. Tom insisted on a divorce. He said it would be more honorable.
More honorable?
Yes. He said he had to think of the Katangan woman. If he sought an annulment and succeeded, she, being a simple soul, would feel she'd never been really married to him.
And he was most anxious that she should feel she'd been married to him, wasn't
Well,
he?
that was just how he felt at the time. He was still sick, you know. We had to humor him.
Yes.
He just wanted the Katangan woman to know that however brief their liaison, it had been lawful and meaningful in his eyes.
So that as a consequence, any possible offspring of the marriage might be considered legitimate.
I object, my lord.
Yes, Mr. Harvester, that doesn't seem to me at all a proper question to put to the witness.
I apologize, my lord. Lady Dorothy, were you acquainted with the terms of your husband's will before he died?
Oh, yes. Tom always liked me to know about those things. We discussed it just before he settled the final form.
You knew then that your children had been described in it as living legitimate offspring, did you?
Yes.
Didn't that strike you as strange wording? Formal to the point of absurdity.
No. It was just Tom's way. He loved the precise phrase. It was only with the greatest difficulty I could persuade him not to refer to me throughout the document as his relict.
Now, you've testified, Lady Dorothy, that shortly after you'd advanced money to my client, you heard him say something sinister. You say that it was then that you became opposed actively towards him?
Yes, that's right.
And you'd really have us believe that before that you were approaching him with an open mind?
Yes, I was.
I suggest you never had an open mind at all, did you? You had deep reasons for not having an open mind.
You do say the most offensive things, young
Lady
man.
Dorothy, wasn't there one reason above all others that was calculated to make you permanently hostile to Raoul Lapointe? A reason that nobody has dared to breathe so far in this court?
This is ridiculous.
And didn't that reason ensure that even through your period of supposed tolerance towards this intruder, you would continue to work against him powerfully and deviously?
Mr. Harvester, excuse me. You seem to have lost me completely. I wonder what reason it is that you're referring to.
No further questions.
Son of the late Sir Tom.
I am.
What is your address?
84 Court Street, Fulchester.
And your occupation?
I'm in journalism on the staff of the Daily Clarion, training for an editorial position.
I see. Mr. Crittenden, have you ever met the accused in this case, Raoul Lapointe?
Yes. Mr. Lapointe claims to be the son of my late father by an early marriage he made in the Belgian Congo. His claim was conveyed to me and my family by our solicitor, Mr. Wilfred Bowers. I have certain proof to put before the court. I shall demonstrate that the birth certificate is a forged document.
I now refer your lordship to Exhibit 2, the birth certificate and the attached report. The report proceeds from the firm Weatherby & Clark, private investigators and experts in the field of counterfeit and forgery.
Yes, Miss Tate, yes, I see. May I ask you, Miss Tate, why you are not calling expert testimony?
This report, in fact, merely confirms discoveries made about the document by Mr. Crittenden himself, my lord, and it is an agreed document.
This witness initially made the discovery.
Yes, my lord.
He has a certain skill in these matters.
Your lordship may care to think so. I ask you to remember that throughout his investigation, Mr. Crittenden had at his disposal the facilities of a great newspaper, in particular, the photo analysis section. With the court's permission, we shall require some particular photographic blow-ups, which have been prepared.
Very well, Miss Dade. You may leave the box, Mr. Crittenden, if it will make it easier for you.
Thank you, my lord. Certificate, as Raoul Lapointe presented it to Mr. Bowers. You will observe the date, May the 2nd, 1947. Here are the names of the child, Raoul Edouard. Here are the names of the parents. Also the signature of the acting registrar, Auguste Van Helm, sans permission. The name Lapointe has been added after the child's names. I don't think there can be any doubt that this is in a different hand, not that of the Reverend Van Helm, in other words. The folds and creases of the document, as also the character of the paper itself, would seem to indicate that it is old, of original issue, in fact. But I invite you to look a little more closely at one of these folds. There's a strange effect of splitting or expansion of the surface. This, as the report from Weatherby Clark entirely agrees, is significant with the paper having been gently heated at some stage to produce discoloration and consequent effect of age. Of course, that doesn't indicate a great deal in itself. Such effects could conceivably be caused by an accident. But a still closer look at the top right-hand corner of the document, however, gives us this, the watermark. Now, this is something of a curiosity. It is, in fact, the registered mark of the Rollinson Paper Mills, Swyford, Lancashire. Now, you'll say there's nothing strange about a British-made paper turning up in the depths of the Belgian Congo. Well, no, there isn't. But in point of fact, as I can demonstrate to the court if required, the other certificate, the marriage document, was printed on Belgian paper, and Rollinson's claim never to have done any trade with that part of Africa. They couldn't possibly have supplied the paper for the certificate dated 1947 anyway. The simple fact is, they didn't start up in business until 1955.
In support of that last statement, my lord, I need only refer you to the investigatory report.
I see. Thank you, Miss Dade.
Mr. Crittenden, when you discovered that the birth certificate was a forgery, what did you do exactly?
I arranged for Weatherby Clark to make a similar examination, and when I found their conclusions were the same, I went straight to the police.
I see, thank you. You may return to the witness box.
Crittenden, when exactly did you carry out your investigations into the certificates, which led to this dramatic discovery?
At about the beginning of February last, I had the documents a month before I was satisfied that the birth certificate was a forgery.
I see. But Mr. Lapointe had come to England and begun to press his claim in the previous December, hadn't he?
Yes.
It was quite a time, Mr. Crittenden, before it crossed your mind that the documents might be forged.
We were concerned with other lines of investigation at first. The judgment of the Zaire Legation Authority, that took a little time to get.
And in the event proved entirely positive.
Oh, yes.
That's a bit odd too, isn't it, Mr. Crittenden?
No, not really. I've no doubt it's a very good forgery. I don't take Lapointe for a fool. Coming from where he does, with intimate knowledge of the requirements, well, he'd obviously see to it that the thing looked right, wouldn't he?
Then you don't doubt that my client actually comes from where he says he does, and knows somewhere and so on?
No. My guess is he's a lad from the mission, all right, just as he says, and grew up on this extraordinary story about a nurse, Marie Caballo, who once married an Englishman, and then one day saw a way in which he could turn it into profit for himself.
As you say, your guess. Quite. Anyway, you let some weeks roll by before you wondered if the documents might be forgeries.
Not let some weeks roll by. That sounds dilatory. Merely mark time. We had to proceed with great care, after all. My mother's panic fear lest it should have...
I'm sorry, Mr. Crittenden, what was that? Panic fear?
I'm simply saying that my mother could never really believe Lapointe was actually my father's child. Never at any time. So naturally she was afraid. We had to explore one avenue at a time, meticulously, if we were ever going to disprove this absurd contention.
Yet why was it such an absurd contention? Why shouldn't Raoul Lapointe have been your father's son?
Because my father wasn't such an ass.
I beg your pardon?
Alone, cut off from civilization, far from well, he took an African wife. That sort of thing's happened before, you know. But no matter what condition he was in, he certainly would have seen to it there wasn't...
Yes, Mr. Crittenden, that there wasn't what?
It's of no importance.
You were going to say a child, weren't you? A colored child. And that was your worry, and the reason for your mother's panic fear, the idea of having a black in the family.